What's up guys, my name is Miguel, this is Rush the Wash, and on this video I'm going to show you how to paint your undead for Heroquest. Our base game contains 4 skeletons, 2 zombies and 2 mummies. But if you happen to have the Return of the Witch Lord, then that's gonna be a little bit more than that. Furthermore, if you own a mythic tier Heroquest, then you're gonna have a few more that look a little bit special. The scope of the video is to get them painted as fast and as easily as possible. But first, we need to prepare the miniatures for that. The new Heroquest miniatures have terrible mold lines, and to make matters even worse, using files is almost impossible, so you're gonna need a sharp knife for this type of plastic. This is one of the things that I like the least about the new Heroquest, and is the soft plastic with which the miniatures are made. Zenithal priming works best for these miniatures because we're gonna use contrast paints, and we start with black, follow it by a grey, and a very light touch of white on top of that. Now it's when we can start getting them properly painted. We need to focus on a few key areas of the miniatures. For the skeletons, we need to focus on painting the bones. For the zombies, on the other hand, we need to focus on painting dead flesh. And obviously for the mummies, we're gonna work with the wraps. The most common enemies of the game are skeletons, of course. To paint these miniatures, we're going to use Contrast Skeleton Horde. We're not going to go overboard with this paint because we want the skeletons to have a lighter complexion. I like highlighting certain areas of the skeletons, like the eye sockets, the jawline, and also the joints of the bones, to make sure that they pop accordingly. Next, we're gonna focus on the zombies, and I have discovered that Dreadful Visage makes a perfect base for dead flesh. But then is the fun part, and is adding these colors that you see on the screen right now to make them look even more interesting. Two of the colors that I like to experiment with in these zombies were Gut Ripper and also Luxion Purple, but as you can see, I have watered them down to a consistency similar to milk, so it remains as a glaze on top of that. We're gonna follow with Dark Oath Flesh on both types of different skin for zombies, and then it comes the part where we're gonna actually play with colors that might be a little bit surprising when we paint them. In here I'm using Talassar Blue, very watered down, and I'm focusing on the deepest recesses of the skin of the zombies. Next, I'm going to use Angron Red Clear, and because of the consistency of this air paint, I don't need to water it down at all. And we're gonna focus on the open wounds, the recesses, the mouth and the eyes, and any areas where you think that a little bit of shock value is worth the pain. The Heroquest Mummies are without a doubt the fastest of the 3 types of miniatures that we're painting today. From a base of Agros Dunes, we're gonna get some ice yellow, water it down and sharpen our brush so we can get those wraps highlighted. The exposed flesh of the mummies can follow the same process that we did with the zombies, but in here I'm not using the blue or red colors anymore. And now that we've finished this main area of the miniatures, it's time to paint another one that is quite important in 2 of them. The zombies and the skeletons carry their weapons and some armor, and then we need to learn how to paint rust. I have explained this process in several of my previous videos, and if you haven't watched those, well, maybe you need to subscribe to the channel. Done? Hey, there you go, thank you. The process is very simple and is comprised of 5 steps. First, we're gonna start painting those areas with Gore Grunt of Fur. Gore Grunt of Fur works great for many things, like painting leather for instance, but for rust it is incredibly efficient. After that is done, we're gonna paint them with orange, and for that we're gonna use this color. Use a brush that you don't really care much about and do some stippling, which is painting small dots like this. Once that is done, this one. Chai is purple, it's a very opaque color, so you need to water it down, but you can use many other purples to do this. I really like how it darkens this rust and it makes it look like metal that has been thoroughly corroded. Chai also makes a very good base for bronze, which we will see later how to paint. And because it is so dark, you can use it to retouch the eye sockets and the teeth of the skeletons. It is time to show that they are made with metal, so we're gonna use this paint over here. And here you have to be careful, because if you do dry brush or something that is not very controlled, you might end up staining the bones around. In my case, I took a very old brush, I cut off some of the small hairs in the tip, and then I just retouch with it, as you can see. For smaller details like these rivets or the small buttons in the pouches of the skeletons, then I used a detail brush and I had a more controlled approach towards doing that. If you are an observant painter, you probably have noticed that there are green patinas in some of the areas of the skeletons. I'll tell you later how I did it. And after all that is done, we just need a little bit of this. Use Agrex Earthshade to tone down some of the highlights. With the key areas of the miniatures out of the way, we can start playing around with the details. And for that, I strongly recommend using this. I'm not talking about special brushes or techniques or any kind of tools like that. No, it's actually what I'm wearing on my face, and I've seen it several times in forums, and I'm quite surprised how helpful they became. 3 times magnification is no joke, and it actually helps a lot. But anyways, let's get back to painting. The clothing on the skeletons, we're gonna use Achelian green, and watering it down, it is going to be great also to create that patina effect on some of our metals that we want to look like bronze. I use this simple technique on my mythic tier skeletons quite sparingly. As you can see, I'm doing it on the scale mail around the waist, on the shields, and also on the pommel and the guard of a sword. After so many washes here and there, I use Iron Breaker to highlight some of the areas that I want to still look metallic and became matte because of the contrast paint. The fur on the skeletons we're gonna paint with Drakenhof Nightshade, which brings me to something that I think about and why skeletons that look like ancient warriors have scythes as weapons. Doesn't make much sense, honestly. The zombies, on the other hand, I like them. They have some clothing and it's much more interesting to paint them because you can go a little bit overboard here. For me, I always like adding some extra colors. I'm very colorful on my approach to painting miniatures, and the zombies bring the opportunity to do interesting things. You just use something that is contrasting against the skin, which is more mute down, and that's why I like painting the pants, the shields and other stuff with more vibrant options than the ones that we did for the flesh. The female mummies from the mythic tier do have something interesting, which are these bead necklace around their neck. I painted mine with red, mixed it with yellow and created slightly desaturated versions of it by adding a little bit of ice yellow and then white. The trick here for these small highlights is keeping your brush quite sharp. Sometimes you make mistakes, but don't worry because you can always fix them with subsequent highlights. The hair I painted with Drakenhof Nightshade, and once that dry, I also highlight with pure white. And speaking of hair, you can paint the hair on your zombies with any of the contrast brown paints. Shade colors also work quite well as using things like Drakenhof Nightshade or watered down Leviathan Blue. Seraphine Sepia and Agrex Earthshade also work great to dirty down the clothing and the armor and the metals in your miniatures if you have overdone a little bit of the highlights, or if you feel that they are too clean for being undead. The latest edition of Heroquest and the Mythic tier in particular have very interesting concepts for the undead. This is a game that deserves to be painted, and it makes a big difference for your players to have these undead and the rest of the monsters colorful and ready to face them in the dungeons of Sargon and the Witch Lord. Maybe you want to paint your bases as well, so you need to click on this video right here. My name is Miguel, this has been Rush the Wash, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Un beso, adios!